and welcome to Live, Laugh, Love Lit, establishing a love for reading at home. All right, so today's talking points, you're going to get a chance to meet your facilitator, and then we're going to talk about honoring choice, quality over quantity, family traditions, mirror images, and some solutions to a few common problems that tend to rise up when trying to build a love of reading within your child. All right, first things first, I am your facilitator, Aisha Krista Atkinson. Presently, I'm proudly serving as an elementary ELAR and science instructional coach right here at Stafford Municipal School District and Stafford Elementary School. Um, a little bit about myself. I am the mother of a sweet boy named Aries Williams. He is presently 5 years old, and he also has a few challenges that have come his way. He is a child with multiple disabilities that include cerebral palsy, hydrocephalus, and also autism spectrum disorder. You're going to hear quite a bit about my son and some of the strategies that I've implemented in raising him to be a reader who actually really loves to read. Next up, I am also serving as the district liaison for the third grade reading challenge NCAA Read to the Final Four. If your child is a third grader this year, they've had a chance to kind of meet me and learn all about the challenge through their classes and also through some of our Class Dojo posts. So many of these strategies that I'm going to present tonight will be helpful to you if you do have a third grader who is participating in this challenge. And last but not least, a little known fact about myself. I graduated at the top of my class as an undergrad from the University of Mount Olive in 2013. All right, so our first topic is honoring choice. All right, my recommendation, especially when you're just starting to get your child to develop a love for reading, is to allow them to choose books based on interest first. I know that sometimes we get a little caught up on wanting the student or the child to read books that are on grade level or that seem, really popular. But if we're really wanting our children to develop a love for reading, we need to give them an entryway. And that entryway is something as simple as letting them pick what they're interested in. So here's Love Lit tip number one. When students love what they are reading about, they will develop joy around reading. There's nothing worse than sitting down and reading something that you just don't have an interest in, especially when you're just starting to either learn to read or you're just starting to build that relationship with books. All right, so another way that you can honor choice is an example that I used with my own son. So when he was a little bit younger, I introduced him to Walt Disney's The Jungle Book, and he loves some of the music from that movie, particularly the bare necessities that Baloo, the bear, and Mowgli, the little boy, sing together. So when it came time for choosing a book for him, I introduced him to a kid lit version of Rudyard Kipling's The Jungle Book, which was the inspiration for the Disney movie. So this is one way that you can kind of like segue honoring choice into your child's interest for reading books. All right, another strategy for honoring choice is going to be introducing them to books about topics that they are actually really curious about. So if your child is, asking questions about certain topics like maybe space or sports, all right, invest in that curiosity by, applying this, this choice for applying this choice of, hey, let's go to the bookstore, let's go to the library and pick a book about your this thing that you're interested in. We don't have to always know all of the answers to their questions, and really and truly, we're not supposed to. We're supposed to kind of, build within the child ways in which they can get the answers or come up with the answers on their own. So allowing them to buy a book or grab a book that relates to something they're curious about is a way to get that done. So, for example, if your child is really curious or has been asking a lot of questions about how do you cook this, or why do you use this ingredient instead of that ingredient, something to do to kind of segue that interest into reading is to get them a children's cookbook. And then, give them an opportunity to actually, try out some of the things that they're learning from that cookbook. Or, work together to either create a recipe or replicate a recipe that they've read. This is something that, can help build interest and love for reading. Next up is quality over quantity. I cannot express enough how important it is that we don't get so caught up in, oh, my child read for 30 minutes today, my child read for 60 minutes today. It's not about the amount of time that the student or the child is reading. It's about the quality of that reading time. Okay, so, and what I mean by that is, we have to, we really have to give our children credit for what they're reading and the connections that they're making to what they're reading. One way to get that done is to give the child an opportunity to reread and also share new wonderings and notices. So, yes, like give them a book, let them read it, but then give them a second opportunity to go back and reread that book and make note and share with you as the parent or the guardian or whomever what new wonderings and notices they saw as they read the book the second time. Is there something that maybe happened at home or at school or on the bus that they can relate or draw a connection to? That's what I mean by quality better than quantity. Another thing to do is to make reading experiences enjoyable and memorable. So, Love Lit tip number 3 is to snuggle up together and transform your space. Here's an example of my son when he was 1 years old. We used to, that was our routine, was every night. Now that he's a little bit older and he has a lot of therapy interventions that I have to attend and support him for, we don't get to do it every night, but we do it at least once a week. But back then, that was our thing every day. Every day, after bath time and dinner, we would sit down and read a book. And eventually he learned to turn the pages and really got engaged with the reading process. Okay, so, and just because he's no longer one, that doesn't mean we don't snuggle up together. We still do. It's just a little bit different now that he's older and able to hold the books on his own. But we can still have that close proximity, that intimacy together as we read. The next example that you see on the screen is, basically like a sheet fort with, little lights, string lights and pillows and things like that. You can transform your space. Make it like a little camp out one night and make it feel like a magical experience for the child. This is a way to add, comfort and also quality to your reading time. Next up is extend the experience. So this is something, as my son has gotten a little bit older, that I really and truly enjoy doing with him. And that is, finding ways to bridge a connection between what's being read to a real world experience. So my Love Lit tip number 4 is, to bridge a connection between family vacations, weekend trips, traditions, anything like that that's happening in your day-to-day life, that's different and unique to the ordinary regular day schedule. All right, connect that to a book that you would like for them to read. All right, and then follow up by asking your child what similarities and differences did they notice. What more would they like to learn? Okay, and with that, what more would you like to learn? That's going to bridge even more connections to other books that you can have your child explore. For my son, for example, we had over the summer read a book about airplanes. All right, and we learned all about the different types of airplanes and the advancements of technology that have happened with aerospace technology. And so, after not too long after that, we took a trip. To the Lone Star Flight Museum, and he got to see some of these actual planes that we read about in the book for himself. But you don't always have to do book experience first. You can actually flip flop it and do the experience first and then bridge the connection to the book later. So you don't have to do it in a specific order. All that matters is you're bridging a connection between what the child is doing and what they're reading. Family traditions. All right. So this is, kind of it depends on what your routine as a family allows, whatever your schedule permits. But try to schedule a time to read. And that time can be, it can be daily, like what happened with my son and I when he was a lot younger and we didn't have the crazy schedule, or it can be a specific number of times per week. Now that my son again is older, we dedicate at least one time per week to read, and that's okay. It's not about quantity, it's about quality. Next, have conversations about what your child is reading. And for Love Lit tip number 5, you can use the Love Talking Lit bookmarks to help start those conversations. All right, so the handout for today's session was actually a bookmark. And this bookmark helps you to foster those conversations about what your child is reading at home. And it's broken down into 3 categories. So there's a question or a series of questions you can ask before the child starts reading the book, while the child is reading the book, and then after your child has finished reading the book. Another fun family tradition that you can implement is enjoying a yummy snack together. You can do popcorn, Chex Mix, fruits, whatever you and your child love to eat as a treat. You can do that as you read. You don't have to just sit at a table and read quietly. You can sit on the couch and snuggle up just like you do with a movie. Family traditions. Um, so another thing that you can do is take a trip to the local library or to the bookstore. This is something that actually comes from my childhood, and you can see there a photo of me and my own mother. One thing that we always did when I was a child, we would go to the library and spend, an hour of time or more just browsing books, previewing, and, making selections. And one thing about my mother that has, stuck true to me as a parent myself is, giving me the space as a child to pick the books that I was interested in and allowing me to kind of explore my interest on my own, especially as I got a little bit older, was really and truly key. And we also took trips to the bookstore as well. And we wouldn't, exactly spend that much time in the bookstore. But when it came down to selecting books, my mother always kind of gave me the opportunity to make choices about what I wanted to read. And of course, she did introduce me to other things as well, but for the most part, she would try to honor what my choice was to help keep me, engaged and appreciative of reading. All right. Um, Another, thing about, going to the local library, just remember it is completely free to check out a book at the library. And also remember, it is completely free to preview a book at the bookstore. You don't have to buy an entire expensive library for your child. And really and truly, I, now that I'm a little bit older in my own parenting experience, I honestly kind of don't recommend having a big library of books at home, because as the child gets older and they become a little bit less interested in what books you purchased, you have to find something else to do with them. So, always, remember that the local library is a resource. And yes, you can go to a bookstore like Half Price Books and sit down and just read and enjoy. Mirror images. So this one is really and truly super important, I feel, especially for children that, you know, they don't love reading, they like it. Um, but you're trying to kind of push them to do a little bit more. So for mirror images, allow your child to read books that fit their identity. Okay, so this is in relation to their ethnicity. All right, so are the characters similar to the way that your child represents as an ethnic representative of their race? All right, if your child is a child with a disability, are the characters within that book or the topics within that book, does it relate or connect in some way to some of the disabilities that they have? To culture and religion. Okay, what is your cultural background? What are things that you want your child to learn about your culture's tradition or your religious faith? All right, and then of course, region. What are things that you want your child to learn about? For example, the state of Texas, or if your family comes from another country, what are things that you want your child to learn about where their family origins come from? Okay, these are other ways to draw interest and love for reading within your child. So, for example, with my son, as an African American male, I've always tried to be very intentional about picking books where he can see mirror images of himself represented by his race. In the first picture, you see us reading together a book. It's the word I think I'm looking for is it's an adaptation of Langston Hughes' I Too Sing America. And within the pages of the book are beautiful illustrations of African American boys and girls doing things that are, productive to society, positive images for him to absorb. In the next picture, my son in this photograph is 4 years old, and he has in his lap two books that are written by a mom who also has a child with special needs. And these books are feature characters that are children on the spectrum that are learning to navigate certain challenges such as going to school, and learning to speak for the first time. As a child who has autism, meaning my son, it's important for him to see these images within the books, because his experiences in life are just as valid and just as important as other experiences. And, it's a way to kind of empower him and make him aware that you're not the only one who's going through these things. We're not the only family that has the challenges that we face, and we're also not the only family that finds joy in the challenges that we have. So these are important ways to kind of build that love of reading again. All right, so last but not least, here are some solutions. I know that when it comes down to, implementing this love for reading, it's really, really hard to kind of visualize, like, how can I make this work for my family? So Here's a problem, okay? Hyperactive child. Like, what do I do when my kid doesn't want to sit still and, just read with me? First, breathe. Second, let them roam the room as you read. It's okay. The only thing I will say, turn television off, no music, but allow them the freedom to get up and walk around. As you continue to read to them, they will eventually get more comfortable with that process and become curious and want to sit down with you. Another solution would be allow them to work on a craft or have a fidget toy while you read. It's totally okay for them to do something else while you are reading to them. It's okay. Reading doesn't have to look the way that we envision in our heads of how we read when we were in school, sitting down at a desk, or sitting down at the dinner table and just reading. No, it doesn't have to be that way. So if you have a child who's hyperactive and you really want to do this, these are solutions for that. All right, what if your child hates to read? Well, once again, connect what they love to what books you offer, okay? So if your child really and truly is super into video games, get them, introduce them to books that teach them about video game technology. Have them explore, again, going back to that cooking interest. If they love food, like introduce them to books about food production or cookbooks, okay? You gotta, start connecting them to the things that they actually love. Next, start small, okay? Remember, quality over quantity. So if your child hates to read, don't sit them down and make them read for 30 minutes. Give it 5. Build up 10, 15 minutes, okay? Start small and start slow in order to go fast, all right? Next, and this is a big one, never ever use reading as a punishment, especially if your child has expressed that they hate reading. When you want a positive outcome, don't use that as a negative consequence for behavior or misbehavior, rather. Okay? If you want your child to love reading, you have to associate reading with something positive. All right, this is a big one. All right, there's not enough time. You know, we only have 24 hours in a day. We have to work 8 hours, a day at times, sometimes even more. In my situation, and I know for some of our families, if your child has special needs, they have therapy services they got to go to, football practice, soccer practice, cheer, dance, all the things. Okay, there's not enough time. It's okay. Read on the go. Technology has become so advanced that now you have access to audiobooks that you can play in the car, all right, that your child can listen to on their own devices, okay? Another solution, give 5 minutes and build from there, okay? Because a lot of times what happens is, you start small with 5 minutes and you just keep going. And before you know it, 20, 30 minutes have passed. All right. And then, of course, read, pause, read. You don't have to finish an entire book in one sitting, even if it's just a picture book. Read a few pages while you're sitting at the doctor's office. And, when it's time to go for the appointment, you handle your business. And then later on that night, after dinner time, bath time, you finish that book. It's totally okay to take a break, even if it's hours, days, it's okay. And that also kind of, in a way, when you break it up like that, it helps build suspense and excitement within your child. All right. And the most important tip of all, the most important, okay? Be the reader that you want your child to grow up to be. As a mom, my most important role in my son's life is to be the example. So as I, read books with my son, I also model for him by being a reader myself. So many times while he's playing with his toys, I'll be sitting on the couch reading. And, the magical thing about it is he will actually come up to me and sit down and look to see what I'm reading. And sometimes, I'll stop, actually reading silently and start reading aloud some of these, boring books that, he doesn't really fully understand because he's just 5, but he'll sit and absorb that. That's still building a love and appreciation for reading and spending quality time. So, if you want your child to be a reader, you have to model that for them. So, even if you're just starting out with your own, reading traditions within your family, you can use some of those same strategies that I shared about your child for yourself, especially if you're not too crazy about reading. Okay. But again, you have to model that for your child. Otherwise, they're not going to want to be interested in reading. All right, so that is the conclusion of my session. I'm so glad that you had a chance to participate in this session. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out and comment on the YouTube channel. And Ms. Prince, I'm sure, will let me know, and I'll be sure to give a response. So have a good rest of your day.